LeBron James is full of it. And in this particular instance, as it pertains to his son, he is a liar.
He leads the NBA in turnovers per game. The Lakers are one of the worst transition defenses in the league, so that impacts that aspect of it because they're not good at that. Screaming at the refs, yelling at the refs, not even getting back in the frame.
The air in the studio thickened the moment Stephen A. Smith leaned forward and said it. LeBron James tried to shift blame onto Luka Dončić after a disastrous collapse to the Orlando Magic. That isn't small talk. That's an accusation that cuts at the core of leadership, legacy, and accountability. For 2 decades, LeBron has been both shielded and sharpened by the media machine. He knows how to manage narratives, and he knows how to answer critics. But when a voice like Stephen A's publicly calls out a perceived deflection, it doesn't stay inside a TV segment. It becomes a viral indictment, dragging locker room reputations, fan reactions, and even front office calculus into the spotlight. Tonight's script we're breaking down is not about one bad loss. It's about what a leader does when the lights are brightest and whether LeBron passed that test. Let's rewind to the game so the context is clear. The Lakers and Magic were in a tight contest that should have read as routine veteran business for a team built around an all-time great. Instead, the final minutes were a mess, sloppy possessions, missed defensive assignments, and an offense that refused to flow. The Magic closed stronger, and the Lakers walked out without answers. The post-game heat can be merciful or merciless, and in this instance, the narrative cooled in the wrong direction for LA. LeBron gave an explanation afterward, a post-game remark that some interpreted as redirecting responsibility toward a late possession that involved Luka Dončic's earlier decision-making. Stephen A. interpreted that as a classic PR pivot. When the leader doesn't like how things went, point the finger elsewhere. That interpretation touched a nerve for many viewers who want leaders to own ugly nights, not rewrite them.
I just don't know if he's the leader that people are projecting him to be that actually match his statistical output.
Here's the part nobody's talking about. This isn't the first time LeBron has been accused of artfully managing narratives. Across social media, commentators have cataloged instances where public statements about effort, injuries, or team dynamics felt like preemptive frames, scripts written to soften later criticism. LeBron's mastery of the public narrative has been a career-defining strength, but that strength also makes him vulnerable to one critique, that sometimes optics are prioritized over accountability. When a figure like Stephen A. accuses him of deflection, it isn't merely about one sentence after one loss. It's about a pattern critics argue has repeated across big moments. The deeper question becomes, does narrative control ever become a substitute for taking responsibility? This is where it gets dangerous for the Lakers. Leadership failures don't live only on the stat sheet, they calcify in culture. If teammates believe their leader will redirect blame, trust phrase, coaches notice, front offices notice, opponents notice. Stephen A's argument pushed the conversation beyond bad performance into organizational vulnerability. He argued that a leader's job is to absorb heat, to be the human lightning rod so the rest of the roster can keep doing their jobs. When that mechanism breaks, the team's identity loosens, and identity loss is the last thing you want when you're trying to win meaningful games. Whether or not LeBron intended to deflect, perception matters. A leader who appears to knock down his own players in public invites fracture.
It seemed like you implied that he tried to hurt your career. Did something happen there?
I can't talk about it, but that's exactly what I said. It was validated when he went on Pat McAfee's show, because you went on the show that comes on after me to talk about me and to disrespect me.
Of course, blame and truth are rarely identical. Stat sheets and film tell parts of the story, but not all of it. LeBron's line in that game still read like a veteran doing what he's done for years: pile up counting stats, influence the game, and push the team. But basketball is a rhythm game, and rhythm breaks down in crunch time. There were missed rotations and hesitation that can't be explained away by a single quote. That's Stephen A's precise point. Greats don't rely on talk, they rely on action when the clock is short. He didn't say LeBron is finished, he said LeBron's standard must be higher. For a player still argued to be a GOAT candidate, that standard includes owning the tough nights, publicly and privately. This is where young players usually make a mistake and why the league keeps teaching the same leadership lessons. Young stars sometimes confuse media narratives for actual leadership. They believe that a strong soundbite equals resilience. But the veterans who win championships know the difference. Resilience is earned on film and in the locker room, not on-air posturing. Stephen A. pushed that angle hard because the spread of instant clips means the youngest players watch how the biggest players behave when things go wrong. If LeBron, who has spent the last 20 years demonstrating how to respond to pressure, is seen reassigning blame, younger guys will take the wrong lesson. Avoid responsibility, control the message, deflect the criticism. That's toxic because it corrodes the accountability culture teams need to win in the postseason.
Did I think he crossed the line with the incident involving his son where he was telling me not to say anything? Of course I think, because I don't think I did what he said that I was doing. And I thought that was very, very unfair and it was a low blow.
Now let's widen the lens a bit as this moment sits inside a broader generational shift happening in the NBA. Luka Dončić, Nikola Jokic, and a host of electrifying young stars are staking their claims as the league's next architects. They crave moments where they can be decided, not explained. So when Stephen A. suggested LeBron ducked ownership and pointed at a younger star, it reads like an attempt to protect that new wave of leadership rather than simply roast an old guard. The dynamics aren't purely personal. They're part of how narratives pivot from one era to the next. If new stars show up in crunch time while older ones look for excuses, the Thrones conversation moves quickly and ruthlessly. Now let's deal with the inevitable pushback. LeBron's defenders are quick with the receipts, the longevity, the statistical milestones, the clutch game winners and playoff epics that are woven into his resume. They argue Stephen A. is performing a familiar ritual, taking a controversial reading, amplifying it, and watching the debate bleed into the next rating cycle. There's merit to both sides. LeBron has earned reframing privileges because he's built a career of reinvention. Yet Stephen A.'s critique is surgical. When the optics of a loss clash with the rhetoric of leadership, the public wants to see contrition, not redirection. Both readings can coexist. The problem is the binary the media often forces. Either you defend LeBron at all costs, or you declare a leadership crisis overnight.
Losing habits. I think he has bad habits. And there are two interesting factors that I think really play into his impact on the game is not aligned with the statistical output.
Here's the part nobody is talking about, the ripple effects beyond the locker room. Sponsors, league partners, and front offices watch this noise. When a leader's quote becomes fuel for a narrative that hangs around team culture, those stakeholders begin to evaluate brand risk and long-term direction more closely. That's not melodrama, it's practical business. LeBron is not just a player, he's a cultural asset. How he responds to critique, how he owns mistakes, and whether he publicly supports teammates when things go wrong affect the brand calculus for the Lakers and the league. Stephen A.'s on-air take, therefore, has implications that outgrow the 48 minutes of basketball. So, where does this land us? On the edge of a debate that always comes back to the same question. Do we judge greatness by the shine of numbers with a grit of ownership? Stephen A. framed his indictment as a demand for moral clarity. If you want the GOAT crown, you don't pivot after a choke. You stand in the wreckage and answer. LeBron's art of narrative management has often served him well, but Stephen A. insists there are nights when that art must give way to plain accountability. In the court of public opinion, that argument resonates because it's simple and visceral.
I asked Luka what he saw on that, but I thought he had a good look, and it looked like he kind of just lost his balance, didn't have the rhythm with the ball, whatever the case may be, and it kind of allowed him to get back in front of him. And I was kind of off balance when he gave it to me. I thought he had a great look, but that's what I looked. That's my POV.
Final verdict? I'm not handing you a neat conclusion. That's the point. This story forces us to pick. Are we going to hold leaders to a higher standard and believe in accountability, or will we continue to let narrative control be a substitute for leadership? If you side with Stephen A., point to the film, the late game sequences, and demand public ownership. If you defend LeBron, show the career-long evidence of leading through wins, transformation, and consistency. Don't be neutral. The best sports debates aren't polite. They're heated, specific, and packed with receipts. Drop your takes below and bring evidence, play sequences, quotes, and context. Was LeBron redirecting blame after the Magic loss, or is Stephen A. chasing headlines at the expense of nuance? Whichever side you pick, argue with conviction. This debate will be a season-long subplot, and how LeBron responds, not to the critics but to the film, will determine whether this becomes a footnote or a defining chapter in his legacy.